Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Hanging Out Right with Chuck and John. Today, we're really excited to have two special guests who are living legends, and we don't use that term lightly around here, who are not only excellent musicians, but who have also dedicated themselves to passing on their knowledge and wisdom to future generations of musicians through education. Steve Bailey, he began playing bass at age 12, started playing fretless bass after he ran over his fretted Stewart Spectre with his car. He started playing double bass after hearing Stanley Clarke playing with Return to Forever. He's chair of the bass department at the Berklee College of Music. He's been a faculty member at Coastal Carolina University, the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. He was also a faculty member at Hollywood's BIT for 10 years. He's a contributor to Victor Wooten's Bass and Nature Camp, which helps to teach bassists of all levels. And he's an avid tennis player and surfer. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of those things.
You got it all right, except the legend part. I'm going to leave that to Mr. Erskine and Mr. Rainey here. And but the other stuff's pretty cool.
Well, when I read off this list, it's going to be hard to defend what you just said. Steve Bailey has worked with Ernestine Anderson, Bass Extremes, David Benoit, Tab Benoit, Michelle Camilo, Larry Carlton, Paquito de Rivera, Chris Duarte, Brian Duncan, Brandon Fields, Dave Liebman, Dizzy Gillespie, Scott Henderson, Carol K, Kataro, T. Lavitz, James Moody, Mark Murphy, Willie Nelson, John Patitucci, Ray Price, Tony Price, Emily Remler, The Rippingtons, Claudio Roditi, Billy Joe Shaver, Billy Sheehan, Leonard Skinner, Mel Torme, and Jethro Tull. Yeah, I'd say you're definitely on the Mount Everest of bass players.
Sounds like I couldn't keep a job.
That's not true. Now, Peter Erskine, one of my all-time favorite drummers. His professional music career started in 1972 when he joined the Stan Kenton Orchestra. After 3 years with Kenton, he joined Maynard Ferguson for 2 years. In 1978, he joined Weather Report, joining Jaco Pastorius in the rhythm section. After 4 years and 5 albums with Weather Report and the Jaco Pastorius Big Band Word of Mouth, he joined Steps Ahead. He toured the US in 1992 with Chick Corea, and also in 1992 was awarded an Honorary Doctorate of Music from Berklee College of Music. He was featured on Kate Bush's 2005 album Ariel, where Erskine teamed with bass player Eberhard Weber. So it's played with Diana Krall, Elaine Elias, Queen Latifah, and Linda Ronstadt, Scottish and Finnish classical orchestras, and they've also had Peter perform as a featured musician. In 2011, he appeared on stage at the Royal Opera House, London, in the new opera Anna Nicole. He splits his time as a musician and a professor at the Thornton School of Music at the University of Southern California. Gentlemen, welcome to Hanging Out Right. Guys, I'm really excited to have you guys here with us. So Chuck, you have the first question.
Yeah, my first question, I guess I'll direct to Steve. First, are we trying too hard to educate too many musicians?
Wow. I never really thought of it like that. The trying too hard part confuses me. I can say that I keep trying harder, and if that's too hard, I think the industry can judge that, or the students may be a better reflector of that. But in general, I look at education as an evolving process, and I try to always be pushing. And granted, I stay in the fundamentals, and of course, I don't overlook that. But I don't disregard technology, and I don't stylistically. There's so many different ways, especially as rhythm section players, as Peter and I are. My goal is to try harder. I'm not trying too hard. Are there too many musicians? One thing Dan Hurley told me when I was at North Texas State, and I was just getting bummed out and depressed, and everybody around me just sounded incredible, and better. And like a lot of students at colleges, you know, we get overwhelmed with our own insecurities, I guess. But I remember Dan, and I was in some classes of his and playing in one of his ensembles, and I just told him how frustrated I was. And he said, Steve, he said, just remember this, the cream always rises to the top. He said, your job is to only worry about being the cream. Eventually, it'll rise. And that always kind of stuck with me, you know. It's I wanted to be at the top of that school, or be the top of everything. And basically what he was saying, just be the best you can be, and then the rest will take care of itself. So I kind of look at that with all of our students in Berklee. I mean, we've got 6,000 music students now. So you could look around and say that's too many, and I'm sure we'll address it in other questions. But I just never thought of it in the fact that there are too many musicians.
Well, you know, when I say too many, I probably could have used a better wording. I just found that the little clinics that I do at universities, also too when I was teaching privately, and especially when I was at BIT, I headed the music department. Whereas I find that some students have paid money to come and learn to do something that they should already know how to do or understand. And as time goes by, I was able to tell that they were not a musician. They would have been a better tax collector, policeman, grocery clerk. That music was just something that they did not have. They were not able to grasp things. You and I also experienced a student at camp one year that he was I guess he was around 40, in his 40s, and he went to everybody's camp, but he had no feel for music, and he was always asking for help. Very minuscule. I don't know if you remember this guy or not, but he was always asking for help when the help where he should not have needed the help, and he was there trying to learn how to do something that he just, you know, he was wasting his money. He did not have it. And with a lot of students that I've had, that basically they don't, they're not as interested as they should be, or they just don't have it. You know, that's what I was trying to say in that one question. I do believe in helping to educate and showing, although I don't believe I teach anything when I do this, but I do show what's possible off of the basic elements of playing the instrument. Um, Peter, what do you think?
Well, um, it's not easy to answer this, you know, without factoring in the COVID-19, the situation we're in right now with the lockdown, because the very nature of teaching is different, and we're doing it through literally through this lens. Um, I suspect we'll get to that a little bit more or later in this conversation. But as far as you know, do so many people need to learn about music? And I understand what you're saying, Chuck, but I couldn't help but think of my brother. He's passed away now, but he was older than me. His music teacher told him he'd never make it, and so my brother gave up. Now, of all things, you know, he was studying the accordion, and for an accordion teacher to tell somebody they're not going to make it, there's kind of an odd
Oh my God.
something about. It's not quite an oxymoron, but there's a very very bizarre, unpoetic justice to it. Um, and I always felt bad that that this guy had taken it upon himself. Um, and I've had some students who I recognize don't have the passion, don't seem to have the intrinsic rhythmic abilities or understanding. A lot of times it's they don't speak the vocabulary. and I'll be blunt and say, you have to do your homework. You have to know this language. But sometimes the the act of learning music can enable them to realize another greater part of themselves. For example, I had a student a few years ago. He had a double major. Now, he was good enough to be in the top jazz band at the University of Southern California. I found out just before graduation this guy was the valedictorian for the entire University of Southern California, which is a pretty big deal. And I thought he was just my drum student, but this guy is smart. I once played him a track. It's a 7-minute track, Keith Jarrett's Quartet with Dewey, Redmond, Charlie Hayden, and Paul Motion. And Paul Motion is just playing this beat on a small cowbell, bass drum, and snare. And for 6 minutes, that's all he's doing. And it's only after 6 minutes that he finally plays a cymbal. It's so specific. It's so focused. So if anyone's interested, the tune is called Common Mama. And Sam Brown was playing guitar on it too, on the album. Anyway, this tune's bopping along, and it's this kind of sort of Latin-y feel, loose kind of thing. And I asked this student, I said, what makes this so great? Expecting he would see it from my point of view, like, well, what makes it so great is that Paul Motion doesn't play a cymbal until 6 minutes into the piece. And he just looked at me and said, wow, well, Paul Motion's letting the music do all the work.
Mm.
And I said, you know what? You just got an A+ for life. Because he saw the piece in a way that I wasn't capable of seeing it. And it was one of those lessons where I walked away feeling like I had learned much more than the student had. So I don't think we should close a book to anyone or close a learning opportunity to anyone. Myself, but can we refer students to gigs? Not like the old days. We don't have as many bands traveling, touring. There aren't the clubs, the venues, the concert halls like there used to be. So the profession has changed quite a bit. That might be a topic for another question.
Actually, I think that's a great topic for us to unpack a little bit more, actually, because we're talking about the future of music education, and we have a chapter in that book, The Tune of Success. The last chapter is called The Fog of Business. We can't see the future. We don't know what it's going to look like, but I think we can kind of sense what the future of the music business might look like, and if we're smart, maybe we can be proactive in shaping that future, and maybe shaping education so that the students, regardless of what happens, they're equipped to handle it either way. As jazz musicians, one of the great skill sets that we have is the ability to improvise and to take any situation, anything. It's like, okay, I wasn't expecting that, but I can roll with it. I can roll like you saying earlier, letting, like that student so wisely said, let the music kind of guide where it will take you, and just be open and responsive to it, and be equipped to be able to respond however, that. And I think maybe that's the key to this whole thing is teaching students the skills they need to handle whatever might come, because we don't really know necessarily,
You never know.
We never know. And I go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to, oftentimes at the beginning of a school year, I'll say to a student, I'll say, we can unpack the entire 4 years, pretty much with the following bit of advice. I say, it's really as simple. Just play what you'd like to hear.
Hmm.
Now, if you don't know what you want to hear, then that's where a lot of the education has to take place. And if this were French poetry, and if the extent of my French was I talk with an accent like this, I don't stand much of a chance of being poetic or sounding very French. So I got to do the work.
Yeah.
I was texting with a marvelous musician. He's I hope he won't mind me talking about this. He's a timpanist in the Berlin Philharmonic, and generally considered to be probably the greatest timpanist in the world. And Tim Genus of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. I once ran into him in Berlin. I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm studying with this guy Wieland." And I said, "Why?" And he just said, me and everyone else were just trying to figure out how he does what he does." So this is an incredibly gifted musician, but he'd rather be a jazz drummer.
Hmm.
And he starts texting me stuff about, this is really my passion. This is my. But I said, man, you got to do the work. You've got a lot of listening homework to do. You really don't know the vocabulary. So that's all fine and good that you want to do it. And I said, I'd like to sit in with the Berlin Phil, and I'd like to play timpani on that Beethoven 7. How does that go? No. Yeah.
Wow.
He got your point, though.
Yeah, and he said, I hope you'll always be so blunt with me. And I said, yeah, don't worry, pal.
Hey, I want to throw a quick question to Steve. I was thinking about, some of the greatest educational experiences I had in music have been on the gig. And I remember you telling a story about playing with Dizzy Gillespie and playing a burning bass solo. And then afterwards, he said something to you. I was wondering if you'd share that story.
Well, I want to jump back a little bit if you don't mind, and I'm happy to tell that story. As painfully funny as it is, and humiliating and educational, and it's probably one I've told. I get a lot of requests for that one. I'll put it that way. But to go back to something we said earlier is that, and I'm with Peter. People play music because they love it, and if they want to study it, more power to them. And if they want, it gets back to what Dan Hurley said, the cream will rise to the top. If you don't become cream, it's not going to rise to the top. But I don't think that should stop us from our passion of music. Now, Peter makes an incredible point, and I tell it to students all the time. It's vocabulary. Victor Bailey, who was on my faculty up until he passed, and he had one of the most brilliant lines, and I quoted it. It goes, "Everybody's in love with the idea of being great. Nobody who starts playing music doesn't want to be great." He said, "The hard part is being in love with the work that it takes to be great." And that's where I see people separate, because they have this ideal and this I'm going to be the cream. But it takes some churning, and I don't know how it all works with milk, but I know how it works with music. It is work. I mean, and it's work that the great musicians I know and the great students I know love the work too. Practicing has never been a pain for me. I love it. I love getting a drum rudiment book and reading those rhythms, and I just love all that stuff. But here's a point, and it gets back to that so many students we turn out at Berklee. Every graduation, I turn around, I see 1,000 whatever you call those sandwich mortar boards flying into the air, you know, when they graduate. And we often say, you know, where are they going to go? What are they going to do? You know, the music business has changed so much. And in addition to that, Berklee has a lot of alumni events around the world, and I've been going to some of them. And we'll go to LA, and there'll be 400 people who have some connection to Berklee who went there, and the bass players come and they seek me out, and we talk, and I ask them what they're doing, and so many times they're not even in music. They're doing something else. And my question to them, because this is something, if we start talking about parents and what their expectations are of music education, I keep this one in my back pocket. I say, well, and I ask them, oh, I do computer software, or I design, I do this or that, or I'm an exterminator or whatever. You know, I said, do you regret the time and the effort that you put in, and now you just play music as a hobby? And maybe it's because it's me, but I really encourage them to be straight up with me, because I want to hear about it. And I have yet to hear that somebody said, I wasted my time and I wasted my money. I hear people say more, like what you alluded to, John, is that, yeah, studying music, especially jazz and improvisatory music, is problem solving. It's just constant problem solving. And when they count the tune off, you know, as good as it feels, there comes problems, but you solve them in real time, and you keep it in tempo. And a lot of those students who went on to get out of music, you know, they got pushed out, or they withdrew themselves. They still love music, but the skills they learned in music school and in studying has informed their whole life. And some of them are hugely successful. I mean, designers and builders and architects that I've met that donate back to Berklee. It's funny, the musicians aren't the ones who give money back to college. You know, it's the other people who love music with a passion, who still study it. They're the ones who are the donors, and they go out and build bridges and create software, and they support the arts, and I can't help but believe that they think their money was well spent. So
I love that. Man, I'm like, let me just jump in there real quick. I think there's some interesting things you just said, especially when you were saying about loving the work, and there's a Chinese word for passion. It's ai hao, which is made up of the word for love and the word for good. And I think also there's a weird disparaging, like the word amateur. We almost look down our noses on the word amateur, but the word itself, speaking of French, Peter, the word itself means you love it. That's what an amateur is a person who's loving it. They're loving what they're doing, you know?
they're
The only
doing it
difference,
because they love it, not
yeah,
because it's their profession or they have to do it. Yeah, yeah, I
exactly.
see. Yeah,
Which is
So I'm
like
always an amateur, you
that's
know?
me.
that's well, that's I mean that's my relationship with photography, because I love it. I wouldn't claim it. One of my esteemed colleague professors was bringing up this issue of big bands were not relevant because there aren't so many big bands, and we all know what large ensemble experience does in terms of training and all those things. I won't belabor that point, but I said to him, I said, look, we're at the University of Southern California. He said, yeah, and I said, we have water polo majors, right? And I mean, we offer a scholarship to water polo. I mean, how many professional water polo players, can you name? There aren't any. That's not the point. It's like Steve said. It's the training. It's so I don't know. Maybe we don't need to feel bad that we teach music. I don't know.
And I definitely
It's not a racket.
no, and it's something that it's so I guess there's just so much passion in anything in the arts. But, you know, Peter, you see students, Chuck, you see them at camps and things, and John, you see them. Man, I get energy from students, you know, and I get like vitality when they learn. And I feel like I've done a great job. You know, when I mean, Peter, you know that when you finally you sit, because students, you know, we all, Peter, me, a lot of educators say the same things. We approach it, we say it differently, and I think in this day and time we have to learn a lot of different ways because students learn, I believe, through different modalities and whatever. But that look, Peter, when they get it, when you finally find the right way or the right record, right swing record where they just hear it and they hear the relationship between the hi-hat and the cymbals and the quarter notes and all of a sudden it just becomes clear. It's like this vista is opened up. I get excited kind of talking about it because, you know, I'm hearing Peter in my head with some of my favorite bass players over the years and knowing he knows what I'm talking about, I'm sure.
Mm. Speaking of Peter, what types of both of you actually answer this up, but what types of creative learning experiences do you incorporate in your methods? Especially, I think when we're talking about international students. You know.
You mean as a teacher now?
Yeah, as a teacher.
I'll do it in the now. Okay. Well, this gives me a chance to show off my setup a little bit. This is how I spent my summer. Now, when the lockdown first started, you know, I had a 2-camera setup, but I was doing most of my teaching just sitting in front of the computer at the desk, and then I would grab a little handheld camera and you know, take it over to a drum set, kind of thing. But then I realized that, you know, we had to up our game, and in the case of University of Southern California, you know, we're only 4 miles from Hollywood, so I figured, you know, if we don't have a compelling visual as well as oral or audio narrative, we're really kind of missing the boat. So what I did was I got a multiple camera setup, and that's my front master, and then I have a ride cymbal special. I have a snare drum special here. Got my bass drum. Here's a true overhead. And then if I want to show off and say, well, there's a picture of me and Ron Carter, I can do that. Or go back to the talking head.
I gotta wait a minute. How are you switching? Are you using your foot?
So I'm switching with this thing called an A10 Mini Pro.
Okay, yeah.
And
Magic. Yeah.
I got one of them, and then I daisy chained a second one. And that's my monitor, and then I have one keyboard, one mouse. This is the computer I use for all the video stuff, and then the audio going through.
Are you wearing a camera on your head?
No, I just picked up my snare special. So on the other side of my studio is the audio setup. But what I can do is, so to make teaching innovative, you know, we were talking about having students, minimum 6 feet of distance between them and the teachers with plexiglass. Look at this. You know, if I have to show the movement, they get a bird's eye, you know, snare drum level eye. It's something that's not possible without the camera. Mm. So the video component really can be leveraged into being positive. And so my students feel engaged. they like the visual aspect of it, and I can even do. Sorry, this is just a little showing off here, but um, I have a play along app, so I can do this. 1, 2, 3. If we're talking about like a bassy style, that there's a whole big band thing. I didn't want to take up too much time. Brazilian, Afro-Cuban, small group, all kinds of different feels. The challenge though is getting the students' video platform to be kind of on equal ground.
Yes.
They need to get audio interfaces that allow more than just 1 or 2 channels, and cameras that are more than just in the something that's in the lid of their laptop. USC has been very proactive with trying to get equipment to students. The biggest challenge for us are with the number of students who had to return to, let's say, their parents' home, or they're living in a shared half of a house or something, with other students who also were putting pretty big demands on the Wi-Fi. There's not sufficient bandwidth to do instruction. That's I've got a fiber optic hookup here that's screaming, and it's great, but that's not the case for our students. Right. Sorry, a little long
Peter,
show and tell, but
no. Forget this John Martinez and some bass player named Chuck Rainey. We need to talk about that setup. That is so. I mean, it's just amazing, man. I could tell though, even before we went on, the way you so smoothly shared your audio when we were playing that beautiful track that Chuck played on. I go, this guy's on his game. Yes, but really quickly, what switcher, what brand switcher is that?
This is the A10 Mini Pro made by Blackmagic Design, or the A10 Mini, which is slightly simpler. So what it allows, for example, I can change transitions, like this or like that, or like this, and I can even do this.
Peter Erskine fades to black.
I fade to black. But they're remarkably powerful. If I'm going to do video capture, then you need to use something called the Intensity Shuttle. That's this device here. And that interfaces with a computer that where all my audio is
wow.
is being generated. So, I call it the Pro Tools setup. I'm actually, because I use these universal audio interfaces, I'm using the Apollo interfaces. I'm using a DAW software called Luna, because a lot of the processing takes place outside of the computer, so I have no latency issues. That's one of the tricks with this, is making sure that the audio and video things don't fall out of sync.
Yeah,
we use that the Roland, the VTR, the 4. It's a 4 switcher. Just
that's a good one too. But
I like the size of that little Blackmagic though. It's pretty cool. Small.
Man,
it's a lot less expensive than the Roland, and Dave Weckl had the Roland, and he was banging his head against the wall with a few issues with it. I think it's a great unit, but the ATEM is much less expensive and I think more user friendly.
What kind of cameras are you using? GoPros?
No, I have. Okay, I'll show you again. I'm using Zoom.
No, Zoom.
Q2N 4K.
Yeah.
I have a couple of those. I have a couple of Canons from my old setup. This is part of the artistworks.com thing.
Mm.
And I've got this one Sony here. That's my talking head guy. So I have 6 cameras in total. Pretty cool.
Peter, is that your home or your office at school?
No, this is my studio in the backyard.
Nice, nice.
No, I'm not setting foot on campus. We're not allowed to, basically.
Yeah, that's what
Los Angeles County.
That's what I was curious about. But as far as education goes, we're especially now being faced with these challenges. It's amazing to see how you've utilized that Peter, and how efficient it is, and how comfortable you are with it, because that's where we are now. And we got lucky, or luck, or just a little bit of when it was announced in March that we were going. I took money I had in my budget and I bought all of my faculty, 20 bass instructors, interfaces, because I knew some of them were technologically challenged and others weren't, but we literally hit the ground running. We did all of our training together. We tested with each other, because, I mean, and Peter knows this, and Chuck knows this, because we've shared sessions around the world, and we're already into technology just from a professional standpoint. Educationally, when you teach at a college, it's not that big a deal, but getting on the cutting edge of that at the beginning, before the whole world sold out of cheaper interfaces and cameras, and the supply chain was cut off, really helped us as a department. And I'll say this, as a college leader, we kind of set the way with that. But Peter, I got to say, seeing your rig, man, I want to come hang out with you.
Well, you're welcome anytime. I'm sorry, I feel like I was showing off a little bit, but
No. It's really fascinating, and I love to see technology used that way. And it gets back to kind of what John said and what you said. We can't expect students to keep, well, I'll put it this way. When I got to Berklee, I'd see students coming out of lessons, and they were playing bebop and playing cool stuff in their lessons. And we have a lot of stuff going on at the same time. And I would listen to some of the lessons, but they would always have earbuds on or headphones. And I say, what are you listening to? Expecting them to say, because they were just working on since we keep dropping his name, I'm going to say a Ron Carter transcription on any number of thousands, or a Chuck Rainey transcription. But they come out and I say, what are you listening to? And it's not that. They're not listening to what their instructor is teaching them. They're listening to what they love. And my goal as an educator is to bring those together. And I think drummers have done it consistently through their clinics over the years. They've been ahead of us on clinics. They've been ahead of us in modular education and all of that stuff. I mean, but the goal is, these kids were listening to metal. They were listening to alternative rock. That's what their passion was. So my goal has been to try to create technical foundations that make all of that better. But at the same time, man, you get a Meshuggah bass line or a Meshuggah rhythm groove, and you start transcribing it, you all of a sudden, people who say that that's not academic music have to eat their words, because I'm passionate about, in Western music, there are 12 notes. And as Will Lee says, most of the rhythms I've played in my career, I can fit on 1 or 2 pages of music. And I've heard Chuck say similar things. So if those are the elements, that's the same 12 notes are in classical music, the same 12 notes are in jazz, the same 12 notes are everywhere. What's different is our intent with them, the tone, the intent, the phrasing, the nuances of it. But academically, they can all be studied. And that's a hard pill for some of the more, I won't use the word older educators, but more traditional educators. It's hard to open up to that. And and I wouldn't even be such a big proponent of it until I see the reactions of the students. When all of a sudden now they realize that harmonic minor that they've been studying in their jazz harmony class, and then they listen to Yngwie Malmsteen record and realize, wait a minute, there's some of the same stuff going on in speed metal and thrash and all that kind of stuff. So it just kind of it fuses them. Not everybody's going to listen to Philly Joe Jones and just get completely blown away like I do, you know, and I accept that now. And not everybody's going to. It's somehow melding Ray Brown and Thundercat and trying to
Yeah.
really, because I don't believe we can stop with 1990 or 2000 or whenever. I mean, you said, how are we shaping the music industry? I disagree with that. I always point to the students and say, it's on you.
Mm-hmm.
We've already done our part. You know, Chuck Rainey he's made history. He is part of history.
Mm-hmm.
But history, the future are the students. So all I try to do is give them a lot of options and encourage them, because I think there's more opportunity now. What you just saw Peter Erskine do, if we could have done that stuff even 10 years ago, just the technology to be able to teach around the world. And I'm sure, Peter, you have students all over the world that are in many ways getting the same education they would in person, especially with somebody who's utilizing technology to the advantageous extreme that Professor Erskine is.
That is so interesting.
You know, I'm sorry, Chuck. Go ahead.
I was going to just add right quickly. One of the reasons why I like the system is because it gives the student an opportunity to have experience in playing with other people, as opposed to just sitting at home woodshedding. You get a chance to feel, like I mentioned about Donny Hathaway's Little Girl. You get a chance to feel how different musicians play something that slow and stay in time. You have to experience. And if you're a drummer or a bass player, you know, like we really kind of, the rest of the band kind of stays with us, with the bass and the drums. And it's very important for, I guess, all musicians to have experience. And you get that by going to higher education. You know, once you leave the band or the high school, but to go to a place like USC or Berklee, or there are a few other institutions that have live music, the experience. I've been playing an instrument since I was 4 years old. And over the period of playing classical, playing the viola, playing marching band music, orchestral music, I learned how to play with other people. And you know, it's not all the same. So when it comes to rock and roll, the drum corps that I played field tom in, you know, I got experience in playing a groove or playing with different people. So I noticed, like at Berklee, I've not been to USC, but I've been to Berklee many times, and they have classes with a band. You have classes where you're actually playing, and it's not the same group all the time. So once you leave, you get a chance to really have experience in playing different kinds of music, along with, of course, understanding the rhetoric that can go down when with band leaders. Like everybody's saying the same thing, like everybody's pointing at the same moon, but they're all saying the same thing in a way. So you learn how to interact with other people if you're in college or if you're in some kind of institution. Peter, you were just getting ready to say something.
Oh, yeah.
Hey everyone, my name is Jerry Robert and I'm the publisher at Black Card Books, and I'm telling you, we have just published this book, The Tune of Success, Unmasking Your Genius, by two musical geniuses who have played bass and played drums and contributed to lots of different albums, playing with Steely Dan, Quincy Jones, Aretha Franklin. I mean, these are two legends in the music industry. And if you've ever wondered about how you break into the music industry, and it's a business, it goes well beyond just talent. It's a business. This book will help you do it. And there's no book like it. And that's why we at Black Card Books could not be happier to have published this book. And if you are interested, or you know somebody who's interested in the music business, get yourself a copy and get them a copy right away. Guys, we are all excited about this. We know this is going to become an international bestseller, and it's going to help a lot of people go to the next level in the music business.